So unlike other engines, once you've got your final render, that's the render done. Not in Vue, you can still make adjustments to all your lighting after the render is finished. And there are a couple of things I want to show you with regard to changing your lighting, and that's why I'm starting with close-up camera 3, because it has the guide rays in it, which will allow me to illustrate to you guys quite dramatically how the lighting adjustment, how that affects the image. Yeah, you can actually change it after the render is finished. So you're not stuck with the final quality render. You can make changes to your lighting as much as you want after the fact. And this, like I said, this close-up camera is a good example because it has guide rays in it, which we can change. It also has one of the lamps in it, which I also want to show you that we can change the lighting for the lamp. So basically, this is a close-up of one of those angel statues holding one of the lamps in her hand. So we're pulled right up on the model on just one of those angels that are either side of the stairs, on the lower part of the terrace. It'll also give you a good example of what the background looks like, and help to illustrate my point about having the curve in your background will really help when you move your camera angles around to get a different looking image but still have it all consistent. And the relighting feature, Vue calls it relighting. Now it is an option you have to turn on in your render settings before you do your render. I'll show you that after the render's finished here. It's just a tick box. I think it says enable relighting, I think it's what it's called. And that will allow you to relight your render after the fact. It's a really handy, really useful feature that Vue has that I'm not aware of any other program having. Not that I've come across, not this relighting feature, not after the render, after the fact, after the render's done. And it's really useful to fine-tune your renders to exactly the way you want them to look. You have control over any lights you've placed in the scene. Now that can be the sunlight, the ambient light, spotlight, directional lights, any lighting at all that you've placed in your scene, you can control after the fact, after the render is finished. So you can fine tune it exactly the way you like it, and the way you want it to look. It is a really nice feature, Galen. Yep, really nice, and it's one that I wish other rendering software would implement because it's really useful. I don't know if they can't implement it because Vue does their rendering differently some way. I'm not sure, but it comes in really handy. Because when you set a scene up, there can be times where your lighting is either going to be too strong or not strong enough, and you want to adjust it. Now, in a normal 3D rendering program, you render out your scene, you see that your light is too dim, and so you increase the setting, then you do another render to see what that new setting looks like. And maybe you've increased it too much, so you've got to decrease it a bit, then you've got to do another render to see what it looks like. Now, you don't have that problem in Vue because you have full control over the intensity of every light source in your scene after the render. You don't have to re-render it, you just adjust it after the fact. It's really useful, really handy. Allows you to get the render to look exactly the way you want without a lot of re-rendering, a lot of fiddling. I know that let's use V-Ray as an example because I use V-Ray for work. It does have a real-time rendering engine which can give you a better general idea of what your render is going to look like, and you can use that and adjust your lighting that way to get, without having to do proper renders. It's still not as useful as using this relighting feature that Vue has. I've not seen it in any other software. It's really useful, and I really wish that other renderers would implement something like this. But again, you can't do it on your preview quality renders, the ones that you saw me doing down the bottom here. The relighting feature is not available in preview quality. It's only available when you start getting into final quality and higher. But generally you only use these preview quality renders so that you can do a quick render as you're setting your environment up. Once your environment is set up, then you start doing final quality, broadcast quality renders. And that's when the relighting feature really comes in handy. There's also an option in View called reuse lighting. So what that will do is once you tick that, once the radiosity calculation is worked out, every other time you start doing a render, it won't do that calculation again. It'll just jump straight into the rendering phase. That can really help speed up your rendering times as well. Do bear in mind though, if you add anything to your scene after the fact, after you've ticked that reuse lighting function, if you add a new object or you change the scale of an object, you're going to have to update that calculation because it's going to be incorrect for your scene. So you'll lose that speed advantage if you make any changes to your scene. But it can really help with animation work as well. You reuse lighting, having that enabled will speed up renders for an animation quite substantially, and also prevent that, when you do an animation, sometimes if you're not careful you can get flickering on your objects. It'll help stop that as well. And that flickering is being caused because every time you render out a still scene, a frame from your animation, the light calculation is being redone each time and it's changing slightly, and it's the change between the first frame and the second frame that causes that speckle, that flicker I guess you'd call it, on your objects as the camera's moving through your scene. Enabling relighting in View will help stop that from happening and also speed up your render. That's for those guys that want to do animation in View. Again, I'm not animating my cameras, but I just wanted to point it out in case you do want to animate anything. Make sure you reuse your lighting. It's almost finished its render here. Once it's done its render, it's going to do the lighting pass, so it'll lighten it right up. And you guys can get a better view of it instead of looking at 3/4 of black screen there. And then I want to show you this relighting feature in View. So now it's working out its calculation for its lighting. Let me just jump back into the image. Alright, now you see our God rays here. Now, because we're working in final quality, you've got all of this noise happening in the God rays. When you work in broadcast quality, that will fix all of that up. You won't get that noise. But this is why I suggest you don't ever settle for final quality, but always render in broadcast quality. Because broadcast quality will really clear up all of that noise that's happening in our God rays and make them look nice. It'll make everything look better, rendering in final quality. Rendering in broadcast quality, sorry. We're doing final quality just because it's faster for me on stream. But let's look at the relighting feature. So I'm just going to close that render down. It's put it in a stack, so that's fine. I'm going to reopen the image again. If I go to render and post-render options, and we just give View a minute to work itself out. You're going to get a dialog box like this. Now, once you enable relighting in the render settings, any light you have in your scene is going to show up here. You're not going to see these unless you actually have them in your scene, and I do. Like I have point lights on each of these lamps, and we've got our sunlight and our ambient light. Look at the image here as I start adjusting these things. So pay attention to the rendered image here, and I'm going to adjust the sunlight. I'm going to pull it right down and do preview. Again, look at the image here. You see how it's pulled the sunlight all the way down? So basically that'd be like an overcast day. I'm going to pull my sunlight all the way back up to 1 and do a preview again. Again, pay attention to the image. And you see it brought the sunlight back again. Let's do the ambient lighting. So the ambient is just any reflected light that's hitting the model. Let's pull that right down and do a preview. No, you can't change the angle of the lights once you've done the render, Galen, no. You can make adjustments to the intensity of lighting, but you can't change the angle, no. But you see the ambient light being pulled out, it's made everything darker in the shadowed area. So let's pull that back up to 1. And don't think you have to be stuck between 0 and 1. You can go up above 1. So let's pull our ambient lighting up to 2 and preview. You're not restricted to this slider. You can go below 0 and you can go above 1. Generally you wouldn't, but you can. You see we've pulled our ambient lighting up higher than it should be, but you get the idea of what's happened here in the shadow areas. If you did a render and some parts were too dark, you could pull up your ambient lighting to 2 and pull those areas up without having to re-render your image. Let's take it back to 1. And I wanted to show you what I mean by the God rays next. So our ambient's gone back to a natural value. Let's look at these God rays that are flooding across the angel statue, and that is this one here, I think. Let's pull our God rays. You get a sort of a quick image of it here in the corner, a small preview. But I always prefer to look at it actually in the image. But let's pull our God rays back to near nothing and do a preview. So say you rendered your image out with your God rays and you're thinking, oh, I really don't like them. They're a bit too hard, a bit too bright. You can pull your God rays right back and make them a lot lighter without having to re-render the image at all. So you can make fine adjustments to your render on the fly in the program. Let's pull our God rays up to maybe just over halfway. Galen says just sort of another concern while using background images, the lighting should be close to your scene lighting source location. Yeah, that's very true too. A good point actually, I did forget to mention that. Any background image you're using for your render has to match the lighting you're using in your scene. So in our case, the lighting is coming from the right hand direction. Don't use a background image where the lighting is coming from the left hand. Or if you do, flip the image. And I've done that quite often as well. I found a background image I really liked the look of, but the lighting, I didn't want to change the lighting in my scene to match the background image. I wanted to keep the lighting, say, from the right hand side, but the lighting in my background image is coming from the left hand side. Just flip the image in Photoshop and use that. But yeah, a very, very good point. You really have to choose an image though that matches the lighting you're using in your scene. It doesn't have to exactly match, because you're never going to notice it really. You're only going to notice it when, like I said, say the lighting in the background image is from the left and the lighting in your scene is from the right. You'll notice that and you'll pick that up. But so long as they both match 90%, you'll be fine. They don't have to match exactly that. You won't notice in a render. But that is a good point, yeah. Actually, it's one I really should have mentioned, so thank you for reminding me, Galen. Yeah, make sure your lighting matches the render. And if you're using a background image you really like and your lighting is different, remember you can always change your lighting in your scene to match the background as well. I tend not to do that because when I set up my scene, my environment, I set them up with my light source, and I don't generally like changing my light source, so then I look for a background that will match my light source. But you can do it either way. So we pulled our God rays here back to about 50% because we wanted to make them a bit lighter, let's say. Now let's look at this lamp up here. And we're thinking, well, what if I want the lamp to be brighter because, I don't know, I just think it looks a bit dull. Let's find the light source for our lamp, and I think that's point light 2. Now Galen's saying that my background god rays running up and down and the render god rays running right to left made him think of that. Now with god rays, the angle of the god ray, the actual angle, but what you're looking at in the background here is not a god ray, that's a tree trunk. So you can be forgiven for thinking that the god rays in the background are running up and down. They're not. They're actually running on an angle as well. But the angle of the god ray can change dependent on what's occluding it. They're all going to take a pretty much the same type of angle, but depending on the occlusion, the angle can change. So it's hard for me to explain. Yeah, not every god ray in nature is going to come down at that, say, 45-degree angle. If something occludes it in a certain way, you're going to get a god ray that may come in at more of a steep angle, even naturally from the sun. But the god rays in this image are not running up and down, they're actually running at an angle. Those are tree trunks. It's a bit difficult to make out in this image here, but the actual god rays do run at a similar angle to my god rays in my image. That's just more of a general glow going on in the background above where that path is. But we'll see that better, I think, when I do some other camera angles. So let's change our lamp here. Let's make let's say we want it much brighter, so we'll take it up to 2. Assuming I have the right light selected. I think that lit it up, I wasn't paying attention. Let's take it up to 4. And you see how that light is affecting the entire model? So we're getting that bluish light being cast. So it's not only lighting up where the light source is, it's actually, that light source is also working on the rest of our model in the scene. So I don't know if you noticed it, but this blue light here now is being cast from that light because we've raised the value up to 4. Now, I don't want that in this scene because, yeah, I really don't want it to look so much like the light is on. Again, though, if I knock that back to 1 and do a preview, pay attention to the lighting here on the side of the garden terrace, more so than the light itself. So you're looking around here. It pulls that lighting back all the way, so it effectively is making the light brighter or dimmer, and that is affecting the rest of the model as well. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys, that once you've done your final render, you're not happy with it, you don't have to re-render it if it's a lighting issue. You can make adjustments here in the post-render options. And that's not just lighting, of course. You've got exposure, brightness, color adaptation. All of that is changeable after the fact through post-render options here. Okay. I'm just going to cancel out of that. So our image will probably go back to the way it was before we started playing with our dialog box there. Alright. Now I'm just going to take a quick break, guys. I want to grab a fresh cup of coffee. Just before I do that though, I'm going to close that down. Let's pick another camera to do a render from so we can get another idea of a different part of the model. Let's go with close-up camera. So this is close-up camera 1. This is a close-up of that side of the garden terrace. Now, while this starts its render, I'm going to go to my Be Right Back screen and grab a fresh cup of coffee. So by the time I come back, the render should be well on its way, and we won't have to wait quite so long. So I'll do that. I'll be right back in just a few minutes, guys, while I grab a fresh coffee. we'll start this render happening while I'm doing that. So I'll be right back soon. Back in a few minutes, guys. Okay. Galen says, yeah, he was saying it made me think of a lighting issue. Not that your setup's wrong or anything. Yeah, no, that's cool, guy. I know what you meant. Yep. No, it's all good. It is all good. A good example of the angle of the God rays changing depended on what is actually occluding it while this pre-pass is going on. If you look down here in the corner at my background image, you see the God rays here and the God rays here. The angle has actually changed. So depending on what the object is that's being occluded will change the actual angle of the God ray. So we have a God ray here coming down at that angle at a 45-degree angle. We have a God ray up here which is coming in at more of a steeper angle, so a less steep angle, I should say. So depending on the object in front of the actual light source will change the angle of the God ray. But Galen does make a good point in that you do want to make sure that your God rays are coming from the same direction as what if you're putting them in your scene. And the lighting in general should be from the same direction. So this scene we're rendering out now is another close-up camera view, just pulled into the other side of the model, to the angel on the opposite side, on the left-hand side of the stairs, but showing more of the actual model itself and some of the foreground and ground environment. So not pulled up exclusively on the model in this one, we're showing a bit of the model and a bit of the environment as well. Again, doing its pre-pass at the moment, so it's working out its radiosity. Again, once you've checked reuse lighting and it's done its calculation once for each camera, re-renders of the same camera won't take as long because it won't do that calculation again. That's view. And remember guys, if there's anything you don't understand or you're not sure about or you want me to explain a bit more, please feel free to pop into chat and ask me. I'm happy to help if I can. If you just want to pop into chat and say hi, that's cool. If you just want to watch, that's completely fine as well. I did just want to do these renders though on stream for you guys so that that have been patient enough to sit through watching me creating the garden terrace and texturing it up, which did take a while, but you know, to do anything properly you need to take the time. So if you've been patient enough to sit through all of that, I wanted to give you some sort of payoff at the end here and see some renders. But like I said, these are final quality views, final quality renders. I'm going to be re-rendering after the stream in broadcast quality, and I'll be using those broadcast quality renders tomorrow when we start working in Photoshop to do some color correction on these images. Because like I've explained to you guys, it's very rare that you'll call a render done without doing some color correction on it. All studios generally will never send a raw render to a client, it'll always be color corrected. And we're going to be doing the same thing tomorrow, and I'll be showing you guys in Photoshop the way I do color correction, because there's a few things in the images that I want to do some correction on. Things such as darkening up some parts of the environment, perhaps maybe lightening up different parts of the environment, maybe some of the flowers, things like that I want a bit more control over. So I'll start by doing my color correction will be started by doing specific parts of the rendered image. After I've done that, I'm going to do a color correction on the entire image. I'll show you that tomorrow. Yeah, we'll go through all the color correction stuff in Photoshop tomorrow. Like I said, today is more about, for all you patient people that have been watching me stream and watching me create this garden terrace, getting a bit of a payoff and seeing some nicer renders of the environment, some close-up camera renders. I will show you the main, I won't be rendering this main pulled back shot live, but I did pre-render it in final quality, not broadcast, that I'll show at the end of the stream, just because that'll take about an hour, even in final quality, to render out. And I'll re-render it tonight in broadcast quality, ready for tomorrow. The reason that this image takes longer than the close-up images is because we have all this environment that View has to work out as it renders. And the more environment you have in a scene, the slower the render will take. And that's why when I was explaining to you guys when you were setting your environment up, never to put more in the scene than you need when you need it, because it's going to start slowing your render down the more you put in. And that was why I said to you guys, a lot of mistakes people make with Vue when they first install the program and start playing with it is throwing in a terrain and populating it with a million trees and then waiting a day for it to render out. Galen says he has a couple of CC questions. Color correction. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Ask me tomorrow. I'll be on tomorrow streaming and to do color correction, so we'll go through it then. It's always better if you have color correction questions to ask me when I'm doing actually color correction in Photoshop, because then we can talk through it and I can show you. If it's easier for me to show you than explain it, then we'll be set up and ready to go. And that's our plan for tomorrow. Like I said, I'll be doing broadcast renders of all of these cameras tonight after the stream, broadcast quality. And we will be doing color correction on them tomorrow in Adobe Photoshop. And as far as our community category, I can't remember what Twitch are calling it now, community goes, I'll be streaming under the ArtStation community. When we start doing our Art Deco building interior and exterior, which is our next project, we're going to be working in Unreal 4. I'll be streaming under the game development community. And hopefully after I finish that project, Twitch will have a 3D modeling community ready. It's going to start its render now. It's finished doing its pre-pass here. But don't take me down that rabbit hole again. I'm not talking about communities. So, color correction tomorrow in Photoshop of the broadcast quality renders I do tonight after the stream. Again, that last render you saw, the angel statue with the god rays, that's a good example of why I would never stick to final quality, what Vue calls final quality, because there was still too much noise in those god rays. And the only way to really get rid of that noise is to render in Vue's broadcast quality. So that's what I'll be doing after the stream. And so tomorrow they'll all be rendered out and ready to go for us to take into Photoshop. Once we've done our renders here, there are a couple of other settings in the render dialog here in Vue I want to go through with you guys to explain in a little bit more detail, because they're important. Galen says there's a Blender heads up community. Is that under the community tab though? Like if you go to the creative, if you go into creative and then you have all your live streams on the first page, the second category there is called community. If you click on that, you've got all of the graphics for the different communities. Does it show up there? Because I didn't see any 3D community showing up. Like I know if I search in my dashboard for different communities, they show up, but they're not official communities by Twitch. They're ones that people have created, and I prefer an official Twitch community. I know Twitch want us to set communities up ourselves, but they set up ArtStation, they set up a lot of the communities showing under the communities tab. But yeah, it's just a bit confusing for me at the moment. I know it's in beta, so we have to give Twitch time to work these problems out, I guess. Oh, it is showing up there. Okay, but it's way down the list. Maybe they're gradually adding to it. So I know on their support forum, there were people complaining about creatives being pigeonholed into one community. We wanted to be able to stream in a few different communities, because as a creative streamer, we often don't just work with one program. Like we're working with, like I said, I work with Max, Vue, Photoshop. I'm going to be working with the Unreal Engine, so we jump around quite a bit. I know that Twitch created communities to try and encourage streamers to choose to pick the most relevant community for what they're streaming. I understand that. I don't have a problem with any of that. My only concern was there was no 3D community showing up under the communities button on Twitch under creative. But if Galen says it's there, then after the stream I'll check it out. I just don't like to pull up Twitch while I'm streaming because I don't trust what it would do to OBS. My internet connection's not the best at the best of times, so I never have my stream open while I'm streaming. But I'll check it out after the stream. And like I said, I know it's in beta, so I know that they're going to be changing it and adding to it, making adjustments. That's all good. It's all good. I noticed a lot of 3D guys because I mean I watch other guys' streams as well, and I noticed that a lot of the guys streaming for 3D modeling weren't showing up under categories at all, and that concerned me. Because I mean, you know, how are people going to find them if they're not under the categories page? You could find them if you put Twitch TV creative / and then typed 3D modeling, they'd show up then, but there was no graphic for 3D modeling. That's what concerned me. Galen says, I don't have great internet, but you do have koalas and kangaroos. Yes, that's very true. We do have koalas and kangaroos, yes. We have lots of kangaroos. Koalas are a bit of a worry at the moment here because, their habitat's being destroyed by development, but we've got a lot of kangaroos, that's for sure. Probably seen them on the news. There have been some bushfires interstate, and the news channels in this country like to show the kangaroos hopping away from the fire. It seems to be a shot they like to use a lot. We do have a lot of kangaroos in the wild. If you ever do come to Australia, don't get close to those kangaroos, those wild ones. They're dangerous. And they may look cute and cuddly, but if they kick you, you're in serious trouble. So yeah, don't get close. The koala's the same thing. They might look cute and cuddly, but don't try and pat one if they're wild because they'll scratch you, and they've got really long claws, about that long. So they'll draw blood. Always reminds me of an episode of The Simpsons where they did they supposedly came to Australia in The Simpsons. The last shot of the series is the koala hanging on to the bottom of the helicopter as the Simpsons fly back to the US, with that dramatic music going on in the background as they're pulling close to the koala's face. It's very funny. Galen says, someone said that kangaroos were the Australian version of pigeons, annoying in every way. That's very true. That is very true. We've got lots of pigeons too, don't get me wrong. But yeah, they're a nice animal, but farmers don't like them because they destroy fencing. They do have a habit of breeding out of control as well. And that's why you can buy kangaroo meat, so that they do cull them and use them for meat as well. They can become a bit of a pest. And it's bad for the kangaroo as well, because if their populations get out of control and they eat all of they've got nothing to eat, so they basically delude the landscape of anything edible, and then they end up starving to death. So occasionally the government in this country has to do a cull. They don't cull them completely, they just reduce their numbers. You never heard of that, Sniper Echo? Yeah. They are lovely animals. They can be dangerous, so you don't want to get close to one, not a wild one. And the same goes for koalas, but you don't want to get close to a wild one. They do look cute and cuddly, but they can be vicious. The claws on koalas are quite long, and they will scratch you, and they'll cut really deep. So. that's about as dangerous as it gets here in Australia, apart from sharks, of course. If you go swimming, you've got to be careful of sharks. But it's like that everywhere in the world, I guess. As far as land animals go, crocodiles. We haven't mentioned crocodiles, but they're only in the top end of Australia. You don't want to go near them either. We often have stories in the news about tourists visiting the Northern Territory, which is the top of Australia, and deciding to go swimming in this lovely looking river and being carried off by crocodiles. Galen says, like panthers, cute but still a wild animal. That's exactly right. All these animals that are in the wild look cute and cuddly, and they are, but they're wild, so you know they don't want you going anywhere near them. They're afraid. Yeah, saltwater crocs, yeah. That's right. We have freshwater crocs as well, but they can be pretty vicious. And they grow really big here in the Northern Territory. I mean, it's not unusual to find crocodiles that are 6 meters long up in the Northern Territory. So they're huge animals, and they've got huge teeth. You guys know what a crocodile mouth looks like. And a lot of tourists, because they hide under the water, think that they see this river or this, I'm not going to call it bayou, that's an American word, but lake, I guess, and they think it looks lovely and calm and, you know, great for swimming, because the Northern Territory is very hot. And decide to go swimming, and then they get taken by a crocodile. Sometimes they're never found because, you know, crocodiles tend to, it's a bit of a morbid subject actually, but they take you underwater and they stuff you in in the tree roots underwater, so it can be hard to find you after the fact. Yeah, maybe I should come visit you, Sniper Echo. You're an island, aren't you, I think? I wanted to visit Ireland, actually. I like the climate of Ireland. I like a cool climate. I know I picked the wrong country to live in if I want a cool climate, didn't I? But yeah, I much prefer a cool climate. I want to live actually where it snows. Maybe it's because I live where it's hot all the time. But the idea of living where it snows really appeals to me. And there's a lot of good design companies in Ireland. They do a lot of games work, and they do a lot of cinema work as well. Sniper Echo says, yeah, Ireland where the rain is heavy and constant. Yeah. Well, like I was telling you guys last week, I couldn't do the photogrammetry pictures because we've been going through a heat wave here, so I'm not in Sydney, but Sydney the other day was 45 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit for you American guys, but it was quite hot. And yeah, so a lot of the states in Australia have been going through a heat wave. So the idea of living where it snows really does appeal to me. Gannon says, only been to Shannon for a refueling of the aircraft. Yeah. Yeah, 45 degrees Celsius. It's been terrible. Thank God I've got air conditioning, and of course, you know, all businesses, the studio's air conditioned, so that's fine. But you don't want to go out of the air conditioning, that's for sure. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you guys? That's right, after we've done our renders here, I'm showing you these renders. I do want to just go through a couple of settings in the render dialog box in view that are going to be important if you do want to do color correction from any images you take from view into Photoshop. That is going to help make your life much easier. So I wanted to show you guys those. They're basically just setting up multi-pass renders. So basically, you know, anyone that's worked in 3D knows what multi-pass is. It creates a separate pass of each item in the scene and saves that out to its own specific layer or file. That makes selecting things easier for color correction. View will do that and create helper maps automatically also for every object in the scene. I just want to briefly talk about that in the render dialog once we've done our renders. So that tomorrow when I come on, I can jump straight into Photoshop and we can pull in our broadcast quality renders and I can start showing you color correction straight off the bat. Like I said to you guys, color correction is probably going to be the last phase of this project for the garden terrace. Depending on how long that takes, if I can get that knocked out in one stream tomorrow, well and good, which would mean Wednesday. The project after this one I want to do is that Art Deco interior and exterior fly through, but I want to do that in Unreal Engine. I probably prefer to start that the beginning of my streaming week, so on a Monday. So if we finish color correction tomorrow, I'm thinking what I may do on Wednesday's stream is jump back into 3D Studio Max with this garden terrace, so I can just render out some model shots on their own of the textures, like the textured model on its own and some occlusion renders. That's so that I have them ready for when I upload this model to my stores. Yeah, I love Art Deco too. Art Nouveau, Art Deco, love it all, love it. So that's, yeah, our next project is going to be an Art Deco building, exterior and interior in Unreal, in the Unreal Engine 4. I do have, like I said to you guys, I'll show it again. I have a video that I created using the UDK of this Art Deco building interior and exterior fly-through. I created that in 2011, so that's 6 years ago. So don't judge me on it, but because it's 6 years, it's using an engine from 6 years ago. But we'll be recreating that in Unreal Engine 4. So I'm keen to see what the lighting changes are like in the new engine.